Jean-Claude Killy, born August 30, 1943, also known as Guylet, is a former French World Cup alpine ski racer. Born in Saint Claude, Hauts-de-Seine, he dominated the sport in the late 1960s. He was a triple Olympic champion, winning the 3 alpine events at the 1968 Winter Olympics, becoming the most successful athlete there. He also won the first 2 World Cup titles, in 1967 and 1968. Early life: Killy was born in Saint Claude, a suburb of Paris, during the Nazi occupation of World War II, but was brought up in Val d'Isère in the Alps, where his family had relocated in 1945 following the war. His father, Robert, was a former Spitfire pilot for the Free French, and opened a ski shop in the Savoie village, and would later operate a hotel. In 1950, his mother Madeleine abandoned the family for another man, leaving Robert to raise Jean-Claude, age 7, his older sister, France, and their infant brother, Mick. Jean-Claude was sent to boarding school in Chambéry, 80 miles, 130 kilometers, down the valley, but he despised being shut up in a classroom. Early career: Killy turned his attention to skiing rather than school. His father allowed him to drop out at age 15, and he made the French national junior team a year later. As a young racer, Killy was fast, but did not usually complete his races, and the early 1960s were not entirely successful for him. In December 1961, at age 18, Killy won his first international race, a giant slalom. The event took place in his home village of Val d'Isère. Killy had started 39th, a position that should have been a severe disadvantage. The French coach picked Killy for the giant slalom in the 1962 World Championships in Chamonix, France, 50 miles, 80 kilometers, away in the shadow of Montana Blanc. But Killy, unaware of his selection, was still attempting to qualify for the downhill event in northeastern Italy at Cortina d'Ampezzo. Only 3 weeks before the World Championships, he skied in his typical reckless style. About 200 yards, 180 meters, from the finish, Killy hit a stretch of ice and a compression and went down, rose immediately, then crossed the finish on just one ski, and the fastest time. Unfortunately, his other leg was broken, and he watched the 1962 World Championships on crutches. 2 years later, at age 20, Killy was entered in all 3 of the men's events at the 1964 Olympics, because his coach wanted to prepare him for 1968. Unfortunately, Killy was plagued by recurrences of amoebic dysentery and hepatitis, ailments that he had contracted in 1962 during a summer of compulsory service with the French army in Algeria. His form was definitely off, and he fell a few yards after the start of the downhill, lost a binding in the slalom, and finished 5th in the giant slalom, in which he had been the heavy favorite. Yet a few weeks later, he dominated a giant slalom race at Garmisch-Partenkirchen, in Bavaria, counting for the prestigious Arlberg-Kandahar events, the oldest classic in the sport. A year later, he also triumphed at another major competition, the slalom of the Hahnenkamm races at Kitzbühel, that he clinched 3 times in a row until 1967. Although the first half of the decade was a relative disappointment, Killy began to strongly improve his results afterwards to become one of the best technical ski racers. In August 1966, the Frenchman, nicknamed Tatoon by some of his colleagues and friends, scored his first win in a downhill race against an international field at the 1966 World Championships in Portillo, Chile, and also took gold in the combined. Killy was peaking as the first World Cup season was launched in January 1967, with the 1968 Winter Olympics in France only a year away.